Hi everyone, this is Sabrina. Welcome to the S Factor Studio. I have a quick tip for laminated die cut pieces. So in the school system, we often would laminate different things, especially the teachers would laminate things that they are going to reuse. They're trying to preserve things that they were going to use for the year. Also things like maybe sight work cards or like printed games, when you print out certain things and you laminate them to preserve them because the kids would be handling them. When you laminate something and you fussy cut around it, there's a border. You have a border around it. Me personally, I don't care to fussy cut only because I don't do it well. So the discussion had to do with not having that border. In addition to that, there's been a lot lately with laminating recently, and in particular die cutting your laminated cardstock. So the big question is, doesn't the laminate come apart when you cut into it and you don't have that border? Doesn't the lamination come apart? The answer to that question is yes. Yes, it does. Now, typically, I will say this: when we are using an embellishment or an element on a project, you're not necessarily handling that so much, you know, as opposed to if you're in the classroom with students, you're not handling it so much. You're putting it on the project, but over time, the lamination can still come apart depending on temperature, depending on moisture, how well preserved the actual project is, you know, if it's in a sleeve or if it's being used or if it's a tag that's going from place to place. It depends on those things, the temperature, the moisture, and the handling. So like I said, when we laminate something, we're not necessarily handling it, we're putting it on a project. So what I did was I laminated a piece of cardstock and I laminated a piece of vellum, and I die cut them. I tried to use pretty simple. I didn't use intricate dies. That's something I'm going to test later. But I used, this is the mug from the tonic, the tonic shaker. This is another tonic die. I didn't even realize that. So I used this heart, and then I used this die that I recently got from We Are Memory Keepers. And you know, they're pretty basic shapes. And I cut them out. I cut them out of the vellum, and I cut them out of the laminated vellum and the laminated cardstock. So two things with the cardstock. Let me see if I find it, because I'm going to give you my quick tip. It was fairly easy for me to separate, if you see that there, because there's no, you know, you don't have that border. And so with the cardstock, it was fairly easy for me to kind of mess around with it a little bit and separate the two. Again, that's because I was handling it. With the vellum, it was a lot harder. And in fact, if you see here, I still haven't completely gotten it apart, but I had to really twist and bend, and I was being very aggressive with it to deliberately try to separate it. So the thinner the paper or cardstock or whatever you're using, the thinner the paper is, the tighter the seal of the laminate. This cardstock is thicker. This is a Prima cardstock. And so, like I said, it didn't take me much. It didn't take much handling to separate it. But the thinner the paper, the tighter the seal. So the other thing I was thinking was that, well, maybe because, you know, when we put these wafer thin dies, and we put it through our cutting machines, the pressure from the machine cutting into it, maybe it seals it better. And I think that's valid. I think to a certain degree that is true. However, the thicker the cardstock, the easier it is to manipulate it and to separate it. So what I did was I used my laminator. They're cut, they're die cut, right? They're laminated and die cut. I'm going to use this one as an example. What did I just throw? All right, this is the one. What I did with these pieces is after I laminated them and after I cut them, I took a piece of parchment paper and stuck those pieces into the parchment paper. I made sure the pieces were not touching each other because the heat of the laminator is kind of remelting the lamination. So I didn't want to take a chance that if they would get stuck together. So I just made sure they had a little space in between them. I'm just going to do this one to see because I didn't necessarily pull it apart and reseal it. So I'm going to try to see what happens. But after cutting, and this is the quick tip, so after cutting your pieces, just put them in the parchment paper and put it through the laminator, and it's resealing it. It's remelting the laminate. Now, of course, you still don't have that border as when you originally put it through the laminating sheet because you've already cut that border off. But I did notice that, oh, this was the one. So I have two of them. I did notice after resealing it that the seal, and I don't know if you can see it, the seal seemed a little bit tighter. That's a piece of the little holes that come out. I left the piece attached. So the seal seems a little bit tighter. Can I still get it apart? Yes, I can, because if you're handling it and you're manipulating it, if I mess with it enough, it will. But the second seal, I noticed that the edge, it just seemed a little bit more tightly sealed. I didn't have to do it on the laminated ones because, like I said, and that's just extra pieces, I cut through twice. On the laminated ones, I didn't have to do that because, like I said, it took me, I couldn't separate it. So here we go. Hopefully this is hot enough. I'm going to put these, I put it in the parchment paper, and I'm just going to send it through the laminator. I'm going to see if it's going to reseal the ones that I pulled apart. It was just a lot more difficult after they were resealed to manipulate it. It took me a lot longer trying to separate the laminate from the paper or the cardstock. Let me see if it did it. And actually it did. If you see, it resealed. However, I can see where I pulled it from because I think I actually separated the layers of the cardstock, and right there, if I tug on it, it will separate. But you can see that for the most part, it resealed it. Let me see if this one did not, and this one didn't, because if you look, I separated the layers of the cardstock. I didn't separate the laminate from the cardstock, if that makes sense. I separated the layers of the paper. On this one, I was able to separate the laminate from the cardstock, and it resealed it. It resealed it all the way around. So I don't generally laminate before die cutting, but I really like the way this looks. And I'm sure there are certain, like I said, I bought certain bottles and glasses, and I like the way, you know, the lamination looks on those particular dies that I bought. So when you cut with your die cuts, yes, if you manipulate it enough, it will separate, but a way to try to preserve that, or it'll take longer to separate, is to just go ahead and put your die cut pieces into a piece of parchment paper and send it through the laminator again, and it'll kind of seal off, it'll seal off the edges for a little bit tighter seal. I hope this helps someone. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have a great day. God bless, and I'll talk with you again soon. Bye.